What's up guys, it's your host here, Spartanic Arts DxD, back with another high school DxD related video, and this is What If Issei Was Betrayed Part 5. Thank you so much for all the support on this series. I hit 9,000 subscribers, it truly is a blessing. I did do the special, but I might do another one just because I really love this series myself as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it, and don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe for more. Let's go. Chapter 10, Enemies Gathering and Testing Limits Part 2. It was now Lefevere's Kalawarner. As the two of them walked up to the center, they both prepared to start. Kalawarner knew she was a magician, but didn't know how much power she wielded, so she did the natural and prepped herself for anything. Issei was watching intently. He knew they could handle each other pretty well, but he wanted to see them break free from their limited power and push forwards like everyone else had before. When push comes to shove is when it would really matter. However, he knew he would be watching them only for a little while. He had started gaining allies as fast as he could. His appearance and him almost killing Sir Zex and him acting the Grigar could be seen as an act of war. If so, he didn't even mind. Let them come. He wouldn't hesitate to unleash all of his power and obliterate everyone in his path to the top. Okay guys, I'm going to head out to find some new allies. My attack on the Grigar and the Devil's Gathering is most likely an act of war in their eyes, so we need all the help we can get, Issei said while standing up. So you think a war is coming? Volley asked curiously. Most likely, better safe than sorry, Issei replied. Everyone agreed and nodded their heads. They knew they needed to prepare for something like this, and with Bahamut's power, it would most likely cause a flurry of panic, and they would do anything in their power to stop Issei and his new group. Who are you thinking of asking? Tiamat asked, intrigued. She wondered what was in his head. First, I'm going to Heaven to tell them they can do whatever they want. Either they stay neutral or fight with the other factions. As for allies, I'm going to the Shindo Pythion and Yokai first. Then if they don't join, I'll go to the Greeks, Issei spoke up. The rest of his group nodded, and Issei already started off. Bahamut, how can I get to Heaven? Issei asked the dragon. Normally you couldn't, but there always is a way to get there. You must know the coordinates of the place and use a transport circle. I don't know who you would go to for that, though, Bahamut explained. Issei thought. Issei then needed to get everyone's attention to ask a question. So he stepped out in the middle of the arena. Once he saw everyone, they started to follow him, wondering what was going on. Issei? Rainer asked, confused. They were all wondering what was going on. Before I leave, anyone know the coordinates of where Heaven are? Issei asked. Everyone was shocked. They didn't know what to say. They should have expected it, but it still came as a shock that Issei needed help getting there. He was looking purposefully at the fallen angels. They spoke up after seeing his gaze. Sorry, Issei. That was way above our pride. Kalawarner spoke up. So I needed someone who had more authority, Issei asked. Essentially, yes. Preferably one that was high enough rank when they fell, Donosik added. Issei quickly cursed. He had a plan to get to Heaven now. It was only a backup plan until there was no other choice. And if it worked out right now, he would both get to Heaven and get a powerful ally. Okay, I'll be heading out now, Issei spoke up. Everyone nodded and watched as he vanished. They had no idea what he was planning in the aftermath of it all. He reappeared back in the underworld and he started to walk further and go deeper. He was going towards his destination. Cocytus, the prison that held his target, Coqueville. Issei knew this was a risky game he was playing, but if he played it off and Coqueville helped him out, Issei would return the favor and release him. He also knew Coqueville wouldn't want to miss out on an opportunity to get his revenge on the devils that helped imprison him. But he was stopped short as he felt an enormous pressure overcome in the area. He heard a deep below rage and directed at him. Issei hyoudou! How dare you come back to my domain! You will not escape ever again! This place will be your grave! It was a male voice. Looks like someone woke up on the wrong side of the bed this morning, Drake muttered in Issei's head. Issei stifled in a chuckle and focused back on the wrathful god in front of him. Hades, I have no quarrel with you. Sure, I did break free from your realm, but I don't care. So either get out of the way or die, he spoke loudly. Hades didn't back down. Instead, he charged at his pit with his pitchfork. Issei quickly dodged it. He wasn't stupid. Hades was one of the top 5, if not 3 most powerful gods out there. He knew he had his work cut out for him. As the pitchfork landed on the ground, Issei watched as several skeletal warriors climbed out of the point of impact. Issei wasn't going to hold anything back this time. He couldn't afford to. Annihilation Weltdragon, Balance Breaker. Hades wasn't expecting this, but he gave in a powered up to meet the new dragon god in battle. Issei watched as all the darkness started to get absorbed by Hades. He looked to the god of the dead to see in a new state. His eyes were pitch black and his robe had darkness rolling off of it. Issei could hear the cries of the souls literally screaming for help. Very well, Issei hyoudou. If it is a battle you desire, a battle you will get, Hades shouted with a powerful voice. Boost times 15. Issei boosted in response and charged with blinding speed towards the god. Hades quickly vanished in a burst of speed and kicked Issei in the back, knocking him out of the air and plummeting to the ground. Hades was waiting for him to turn with a counterattack. He knew the boy wasn't done yet. He had no idea what was about to unfold his battle with the boy. He didn't know what he could forcefully unleash, and it would take a miracle for Hades to beat it. Boost times 30. Issei kicked it up a notch and stood out of the crater he made off the fall. Hades watched as he rose in the air. He could tell something was different about the boy. It looked like Issei was in a trance of sorts. He was completely silent and was eerie to Hades. He wondered what had caused the boy to be like this. He also wondered what was going on in the boy's mind. As Issei made Hades in the air, he didn't move, but suddenly he held his hand out in the front and started to summon a sphere of annihilation. Hades started to sweat at seeing the power of the boy was suddenly releasing. It was truly terrifying. Even with Bahamut, his power could have been handled with teamwork of some sort of the strongest gods, but with the boosted gear, it made it impossible to beat him. He could boost his power even higher and climb new heights. It wouldn't stop either. Hades quickly dodged the sphere as it was thrown at him super fast, but it was too late to dodge a kick that was aimed right at his gut. Looking up in the eyes of the boy, all he saw behind the armor was blood-red eyes burning with determination. Hades didn't know what would have caused the change in the boy, but if he knew, he would be as left as he could. He would left as soon as he could. It was the fact when Issei was first knocked to the ground that he had a revelation. This was one of the most powerful gods, and if he failed here, it would mean the death of everyone else that had joined him, and he couldn't allow that to happen. He wouldn't. So he threw away all the rules and his limits and decided to break free from his shell. This was just the start, too. Hades was about to do the rest. He was about to unleash a power deep in the boy. Its nature was very embrittled. Hades quickly backed away and covered his pitchfork in dark energy that was around his body. He spoke up in a powerful voice. "Rise forth, my minions, and serve your eternal master," Hades chanted. That's when the ground started to shake and tremble at his call. Rising the ground was hundreds of undead shoulders and a few Cerberus. They all looked ready to tear Issei apart at Hades' word. Issei wasn't phased though. He quickly summoned a ball of energy and punched it toward Hades. Dragon shot! Hades didn't notice it until it was too late. He was hit with it and sent flying away. Issei then turned his attention on the army that was summoned. Descending on the ground, he prepared for an onslaught of attacks at the monsters and undead. Boost times 50. With that boost, any undead in the near vicinity was instantly disintegrated. Issei was vicious as he tore through the whole army, slashing with powerful clawed strikes with the boosted gear's gauntlet. But more enemies kept coming and coming, and Issei was running low on steam. Explosion! He called out to give him a little breathing room, but it didn't last for long. Sadly, something was about to happen. He didn't notice Hades returning to the battle, and he was too late to feel the extreme presence of energy rising above him. He turned around and it was too late to get pierced with Hades' pitchfork. Coughing up blood, Issei was kneeling on the ground. Hades descended and spoke up. "It was fun while it lasted, hyoudou, but this is the end," Hades spoke up. Issei was about to protest or try to do something, but he knew he was running on empty. That's when Hades made this mistake of speaking again. The next sentence he would say would seal his fate. "Oh, just so you know, all those people you gathered are going to die once I leave here to tell the 3 factions you have been disposed of, and I will personally drag those 3 fallen angels back to the realm of the dead," Hades spoke foolishly. Issei felt something deep boil inside of him. Like a supernova of anger was rising deep in his heart, and it couldn't be vanquished by anything. Hades heard him muttered something, but didn't catch it, so he asked him. "What did you say?" he asked cockily. "I'll fucking kill you," Issei shouted in fury. That's when it started. Issei felt his blood boil at the thought of everything he worked up going for waste. He wasn't going to die here. Not now. No, he wouldn't. That's when Hades noticed the blood-red glow surrounding Issei. Soon it erupted into a frenzy of power. Every undead minion and soldier was instantly vaporized by the power he was releasing. It just kept rising too. It was also coming off and burst. With every step Issei took, the whole ground shook violently. Hades had unleashed a new ability in the boy that wasn't supposed to be used yet, due to the fact it was extremely unstable. This was called Juggernaut Drive, Armageddon's Call. This was called Armageddon's Call. Hades quickly backed up, seeing the massive amount of destruction he had released upon the area, and it was clear he was going to die here today. He tried to flee, but was met face to face with a bloodthirsty Issei. Hades was quickly punched in the gut, making his arch back up. Issei then proceeded to follow up with a powerful axe kick that sent God of the Dead hurtling towards the ground. Issei descended on the ground towards the fallen. Hades looked up to the boy as his balance breaker fell off, but he was still giving off immense energy of the power. He knew this was the end. Why? Hades asked weakly as he started as his executioner. Why? You ask me? You asked me that when you should have known already. You dare threaten my friends and family and not expect me to keep my promise of killing you? That's the problem with you gods and supernaturals. You think the universe revolves around you. Well, guess what? It doesn't. It is time for a change. Many more will fail before me. It is the beginning of a new era, he shouted. Hades only closed his eyes and accepted his fate. It was the only thing he could do, and he agreed partly with the boy. Change was coming, and it was coming faster than anyone could see it. With one powerful strike, the head of Hades rolled on the floor, decapitated from his body. The god of the dead was no more. Issei then proceeded to continue deeper to his original destination. Finally reaching the prison of Kookos, he blasted the doors apart with a sphere of annihilation. He stepped through it and began once again. He quickly killed any guards that got in his way and made his way towards the cell held as target. Finding the steel door, he quickly blasted it apart, revealing a shocked but amused Kokaville. Issei hyoudou, or should I say, Sekiru, he spoke with a chuckle. Chapter 12, Enemies Gathering, Testing Limits Finale. Kokaville was surprised to see the boy blow up his cell. He was amused that he was being broke out of by the person who helped imprison him. Issei hyoudou, or should I say Sekiru, he spoke with a grin. Kokaville, Issei replied dryly. So what can I do for you this fine day, he asked sarcastically. He knew something was up. Why would the boy who helped imprison him be here to break him out? Well, let's see, I got a proposition for you. One that you couldn't refuse, Issei had a shit-eating grin. Oh, please enlighten me on this proposition you have, Kokaville replied back. Issei looked at him directly and spoke. A storm is coming, one that will change the world forever. You can have a chance right now to be on the winning side. You can even take Seitri's head and put it on the wall. Issei spoke with a grin. Kokaville's eyes widened. Explain, was all he said. So Issei started to explain to him how he was betrayed and how he came back and started to plan it out. He knew that Kokaville would join when he heard about a war was coming, and his eyes lightened up. So let me get this straight. You were betrayed by the factions and you ended up dead, and then you were chosen by Bahamut, the most powerful dragon to exist, to bring back the dragons and bring about a new change in the world. And on top of it all, you've got your own group that is at war against the factions, he asked aloud. Correct, Issei replied. Count me in, Kokaville shouted in glee. Issei chuckled and stood up. Very well. However, there are some things we need to go over first, Issei said seriously. Kokaville looked like he was expecting that. Okay, go on, he replied. Once we're going to heaven first, and I need you to give me the coordinates. Second, we're going to gather allies afterwards. Then we'll regroup with the rest of the group at Vali's mansion. Lastly, Rias and her Purge are mine to kill, Issei spoke very seriously. You got a deal, boy, Kokaville said with a grin. Issei stood up and motioned Kokaville to follow him. Kokaville had a question that he needed to ask. What about Hades, he asked. Decapitated, Issei said bluntly. Damn, Kokaville replied. He couldn't believe it. This kid has changed this much. He remembered how he protected the Purge with his life. Now he was as deadly and cunning as a cobra. He wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of his attacks. He wondered how strong he was now. With Dragon Bahamut, it had to be mind-boggling. So how did we get to heaven, Issei asked. Kokaville told him the coordinates, and Issei put them in a magic circle, and both of them stepped through. When they got there, it was surprising to Issei. It was as he thought it would be, only more. White and gold covered in buildings for miles as far as the eye could see. Issei looks to side, Kokaville looking disgusting. It was obvious he didn't like this place at all. Halt! Who goes there? A voice above them shouted. They looked up to see a group of armored angels with golden spears. Issei smirked and shouted. Bring me to your leaders, he shouted back, his voice dripping with power. Everyone felt it. They shivered at the commanding president's held. They had no choice but to accept his demand. They descended on the ground. Follow us, they said. Issei and Kokaville followed up to the angels of the staircase to the main building. If Issei had to assume they were currently in the first heaven, they were on the sixth heaven, and standing before them were the four seraphs. Issei, I knew you would be coming, Michael suddenly said. You should have, he replied back. Michael took a look at Kokaville and sighed. So it seems the rumors are true. You do plan to change the world forever at any cost, he said. Gabriel didn't seem too happy to see Kokaville. Why, Issei? She asked. You should know, of all people, Gabriel. I was betrayed out of pure greed, one of the biggest sins. Like I said to Hades before I dealt the finishing blow, everyone's supernatural is flawed in some way. Change is coming, he spoke up. Issei? A quiet voice called out. Issei turned around to see none other than Inina Shoto. She looked like she hadn't got that much sleep. She could see her had bags in her eyes. Inina, he said softly. She registered his voice and rushed and bear hugged him. Issei! They said you were dead, she cried. Issei glared at the two seraphs. We didn't tell her that, Michael spoke up. Issei turned to Irina and asked, Who told you that? The devils? He asked. She nodded her head. It's a long story, he muttered. He then told Irina about his betrayal and his resurrection with Bahamut. Irina started to get real angry. She didn't like that statement very much. So you're telling me those devils threw you away like garbage, she seethed. Yes, Irina, he replied. She cried once again and hugged him. I'm so glad you're alive, she screeched. He quickly wrapped his arms around her to comfort her. I decided I'm going to come with you, she said. That surprised everyone in the room. Michael quickly spoke up. Are you sure, Irina? He asked. Yes, she spat. Michael sighed. He knew that he couldn't do anything about it. Issei then spoke up. This is my final thing to say to the Seraphs. I don't hold any resentment to you guys. However, it is your choice whether or not you guys will fight with the other factions. If you do it, it is a matter of fight to the death. I will not hold back, he spoke up. They nodded, and then Issei, Kokaville, and Irina vanished back into their magic circle. Scene break, now we're transferring back to hell, or the underworld, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Back in the underworld, the forced Satan had started a meeting between the elders. So what are we going to do? One of them asked. War is coming. There is no doubt of that, another added. True, but he is still able to top all of us, the Phoenix head spoke up. What you all say is correct. However, his forces are not as strong as him. We may not be able to beat him, but his forces can be beaten, Seraphal shouted. What Seraphal says is correct. There is a small hope for victory, Edgio added. However, we all know he can destroy all of us without even trying. Do you really think he would let his group fall? Even Sir Zek saw his power at the Young Devils gathering, and an elder shouted. Silence! Sir Zek shouted angrily. That shut everyone up. Sir Zek may have been heavily injured before, but now he was back on his feet and still had a ton of power. His power of destruction was crackling out of his body as he shouted. He quickly calmed down to let Seraphal take over. She then spoke up after everyone calmed down. What you all say is true. However, we will not stand here and wait for him to come destroy us all. We will fight, she shouted. They all started chattering and nodding their heads. It seemed Seraphal and the Satans had rallied the devils to fight. Seraphal then looked at Sir Zex, who nodded. They had to go to another meeting with the other factions. The four Satans then disappeared into a magic circle and reappeared back in the place where the other meeting of the three factions was held, Co-Academy. They appeared in the room with the two Seraphs, Michael and Gabriel, and Azazel, who was awake, but he had the crutches to his tailbone and was broken. Shimza and Barkul were in the room as well. Rias and Sona's Paraj were with them too. The meeting was about to begin. Well, we all know what we're here about, Azazel spoke weakly. Yes, Michael added. Well, what are we going to do? Seraphal asked. Are we in agreement that we need to join forces at a chance of winning? Sir Zex asked. I'm in, Azazel replied. They looked to the angels. Fine. We will fight too, they agreed finally. Before anyone could speak again, Michael spoke up. I, however, have some bad news, he said. What bad news? Seraphal asked. Issei was visited heaven earlier, he replied. What? Seraphal shouted. He had someone with him too, he said weakly. Who? Azazel asked. Michael was silent. Everyone wanted to know. Kokaville, he replied. The whole room was in chaos after that statement. How? Seraphal screeched. He probably broke him out, Sir Zex added. Most likely, Azazel muttered. What about Hades? Shouldn't he have been there guarding the area? Seraphal asked. The Cactus was a river of the underworld, so it did fall in Hades' domain. It seemed Hades has fallen in battle, Gabriel replied. Everyone was silent. It was even more that one of the most powerful gods was killed by Issei. It was dawned on them by how strong he really was. So he has a cadastre of class fallen angels now on his side, Seraphal muttered. It looks like that way, Azazel added. Before anyone else could speak up, the whole room darkened. Everyone got anxious and prepared for an attack. They saw a purple mist with what looked like snakes in the middle curling around the two chalets. The mist vanished, revealing Orpheus, the Ouroboros dragon god, and Ko. It seemed the Chaos Brigade decided to make an appearance. Orpheus, Seraphal muttered. Everyone was still on edge about the new arrivals. What do you guys want? Azazel asked curiously. We are here to help you, Ko spoke up. Everyone was shocked to their cores. Did they hear them right? Orpheus wanted to help them? I will offer a truce for right now, as that hyoudou boy is more of a problem for me at that moment, Orpheus spoke up. Very well, you have a deal, Orpheus, Seraphal agreed. So you will fight with us, Sir Zex asked. Yes, the Chaos Brigade will fight against him as a group, Orpheus replied. Good, Azazel muttered. Until then, Orpheus spoke up before leaving with Ko. Everyone was shocked at how that all turned out. It seemed they had a viable plan and the help of a dragon god to fight against Issei and his new group. They had a small glimpse of hope. They didn't know Issei was planning something, however, that would help him. Scene break, we're back with Issei, Kokaville, and Irina. The three of them just entered a magic circle that was destined for Kyoto. Issei planned on recruiting Yakuza with the Hyoudou gods. They were at the bottom of the hill, which the stairs upwards towards the shrine that housed Yakuza. Okay guys, listen up. We're here without warning. No sudden movements or fighting, Issei spoke. Irina nodded and Kokaville spoke up. Fine by me, he shrugged. Issei nodded and turned around and led them up the hill. When they got up the hill, the shrine was revealed, but they were in awe. Even Kokaville couldn't deny it. It was a true sight to see. Issei should have expected to see something like this. After all, Yakuza was a leader of the yokais. He quickly walked up to the two gigantic doors and knocked loudly. A few moments later, they opened, revealing a shrine maiden in a Kiyomo. How can I help you? She asked cautiously. I wish to speak with Yasuka, he replied. She blinked a few times, then narrowed her eyes. Why? She asked. Something she needs to hear that will affect her life either way, he replied in a commanding voice. She flinched as she heard his voice. It was a king over his subject. It was a powerful one at that. She quickly backed up and mentioned them to follow her. She led them up and down the hallway. At the end of it was a gigantic set of doors. The shrine maiden told them to wait outside and went in the room. A few minutes later, she came out and told them to come in. Once they walked in the room, they weren't shocked to see it like a messy office, papers everywhere. She was a faction leader, so she had a lot of work to do. The moment Issei saw Yakuza, he felt his instincts kick in again. He groaned as he realized what Bahamut and Drake said about mating was right. She was incredibly beautiful. She had long golden hair that curled white tips at the end. She wore a golden honeyed kiyomo that flowered past her knee. She must have known Issei was staring at her since she gave him a wink, which caused him to blush. Forcing it down and regaining his composure, he spoke up. Lady Yakuza, I came here today with an offer, he said. She raised her eyebrow before speaking up. Oh, what kind of offer? She replied. She had a flirty tint in her tone. Issei then got deadly serious. There's a war coming between my group and the three factions. We would like you to join us, he spoke up. That caught her off guard. Pretty fast. First off, what caused this war, and why should I join your side? She asked, intrigued. He then explained once again and about how he was betrayed and how he got back into the world of the living. He also explained about how his group currently was. She looked very upset and distinguished at the same time. She never heard that kind of behavior from the Devils and Fallen before. She knew they had their moments, but this was just shocking to say the least. She was silent for a good bit of time. What is your names? She asked. Issei Hyoudou. This is Irina Hyoudou, and the angel who joined by my side, and Kokaville was freed from prison from Gekuktis after Hades was defeated by me, he spoke up. Yakuza's eyes quickly widened. Hades was defeated? The god of the dead? Hades lost? You beat him? She asked. Yes, he is no more. Bahamut's strength is something greater than Great Red and Orpheus, he replied. She had heard the stories of the Annihilation Dragon God, but to witness its power at first hand was something else. Issei had summoned the Argomeda's descent, and everyone was awed at the power it was releasing. Very well, Issei Hyoudou, you will have my support in the upcoming war. I will speak with the Amaterasu and the other Shioudos to see what they will do, she spoke up finally. Thank you very much, Lady Yakuza, he bowed. Oh, please, no formalities or horrifics. Just call me Yakuza Issei. She had some flirty tone in her voice again. Issei quickly blushed once again, but he was able to force it down again. He mentioned to Irina and Kokaville, who nodded. The three of them disappeared back into the magic circle, leaving Kyoto. They were headed back to Vali's mansion. Issei knew there was going to be some explaining that needed to be done. The moment they saw Kokaville, they wouldn't be too happy to see him at all. As they reappeared out of the circle, Issei was dead on his thoughts. They had all the weapons ready aimed to kill. Kokaville had a grin on his face, seeing that everyone gets so defensive. Issei, what is the shark face doing here? Vali asked. She wasn't too thrilled. Taimat just looked amused, while the three fallen angels were fuming. What the hell, man? Donosik screeched. Issei sighed and then spoke up. He is joining us. I broke him out of the Kyokus after I killed Hades, he said. That shocked all of them. Taimat was rubbing her legs together at his statement. Hades? The god of the dead? Killed? Vali muttered. Everyone had a similar thoughts after hearing his claim. Yep, I decapitated him in the underworld, he replied. They all didn't expect that. We also have some more allies. Yakuza has agreed to aid us when we need it. She also said that she would speak to Shino Pantheon and see what they think, Issei spoke. So it's inevitable, huh? Rainier asked. Pretty much, Kalawarner added. Until the day comes, we will prepare and hone our skills. I will continue to gather more allies and dragons, Issei spoke up. He then had an idea. Who is the next group of people who will become part dragon, he spoke up. Everyone blinked as they understood his statement. 3 hands raised. Kuroka, Kokaville, and Irina all wanted to do it. He sighed and spoke up. When I do this, you will pass out from the pain of your bones reconstructing, and once you wake up, you will be part dragon. You will have more energies and reserves and some more abilities than you normally had. Are you guys ready? He spoke up. They all nodded. He then formed 3 spears of dragon essence and put it in their hands and watched as they glowed white as the essence was absorbed. He watched as they all dropped to the ground unconscious. He turned to Taimat. "Hey Taimat, come here," he spoke up. He had a job for him to do. "Yes, Issei?" She asked. "I need you to do a job for me," he spoke up. She was surprised. "What?" she asked curiously. "Since you can hide your energy quite well and take on different forms, I want you to snoop around Ko Academy and see what the devils are planning. I'm sure Sona and Rias have information on it. I need you to find out what they know," he spoke. She thought about it for a second, then nodded. "Okay, I will do it," she nodded. He gave her a smile and hugged her, which surprised her and made her blush. "Thank you," he whispered. He got a kiss on the cheek in response. His mouth was open and gaping at her. "Close your mouth or you'll catch flies," she teased him. He quickly composed himself and walked back to the group. He heard her vanish into the magic circle and went to go on to work in her end. As he was walking back, he started to feel sore, but this was different. It wasn't just his energy, his whole body flared in pain. That's when he heard a crack. He quickly fell on his knees and screamed as he started to feel more bones crackling. Everyone rushed over to see him already on the ground unconscious. This 3rd stage of his evolution had begun. Chapter 13, Sneaking Around, Part 1. None of them knew what to do. They knew what it was, and they knew what it meant, though. He was going to be out cold for at least 2 weeks. The only thing they could do was let it go through its course and wait for him to wake up. They wondered what it would do to his mentality, and how far it would change him. Everyone was worried about him. Rainier knew he had a drastic change when she met him in the realm of the dead. She knew it instantly. He wasn't perverted the boy she went on a date with before. He was lack for terms. Bitter and vengeful in his betrayal, and he would do anything to right the wrongs that had been committing that day, even if it meant going against everything he knew and accepting a new truth of his reality. Boy, was it a really big reality check. To go from a pawn in a purge to holding responsibility for creating a dragon faction was one hell of a switch for anyone to accept. She knew it had built walls around the pain that was embedded deep within him, but slowly over the time they started to crumble with everyone he added to his new life. The one thing in her mind that was a fact, if that was going to go to waste or not. If everything was going to take another 180-degree turn in a few weeks or not, she knew that she had woke up. He had another few days before the final stage began, and that was what made her wonder about his mental state. She also knew that if he experienced a heartbreak once again, it would be disastrous. That was putting it lightly. He would obliterate the people who caused it without any remorse whatsoever. Rainier was brought out of her thoughts as Kuroko spoke up. "What do we do?" she asked aloud. Folly looked around to see the others spoke up. If what we know is true, that his body is currently undergoing a change, all we can do is let the nature take its course and wait until he wakes up, she said. Surprisingly, Kokaville decided to speak. "I agree with the brat. What we're dealing with is a power incomprehensible to any of us here, and if we try to do something foolish like forcefully trying to make him wake up, could cause a backlash that will release a ton of destructive power," he said. Everyone just blinked. Volley turned to glare at him for calling her a brat, but she agreed what he said was true. If something they did to try to help him went wrong, it could have unforeseen consequences. Rainier and Donosik exchanged glances with each other. Before one of them could speak up, Colin Warner beat it to it. "Let's get him inside and settled in the room. We'll take turns watching over him. We don't know what to expect out of this," she said. Everyone instantly agreed and nodded with her. Volley and Kokaville took his arms while Rainier and Donosik took his legs. Kuroka and Colin Warner took hold of his midsection so that with all 6 of them he wouldn't be dropped. Soon he was sitting in a bed. Rainier had taken the first shift of watching over him. In the living room, conversation began to take place amongst the rest of the group. "Does anyone know exactly what kind of evolution hyoudou is undergoing?" Kokaville spoke up. Everyone turned to him confused. "Why? What does that have anything to do with anything?" LeFay asked, confused. Kokaville sighed and rubbed his forehead. He felt a headache coming from everyone's arrogance about the situation. Evolutions have a very profound effect on a person or creature that undergoes it. Depending on his type he is dealing with, the effects could be drastic or not at all, he explained. Volley looked confused at his statement. "Where did you learn all of this? You were never this smart at the Grurg," she chuckled. Colville glared at her before sighing. "I may be a warmonger, but I am not a complete idiot," he replied dryly. Volley looked serious for a moment. "Well, what we know right now is that his body is changing to handle the power of Bahamut. It was a 4-stage evolution he had. First and second stages where his strength and energy reserves being increased drastically. The 3rd stage where his body starts to completely rebuild itself for the final stage, where he becomes a real dragon before reverting back to his human form," Volley explained. Kovil was thinking for a bit before even speaking up. We may have something to worry about when he reverts back to human. His personality may be changed a bit. I doubt it will affect us at all. However, seeing those people who betrayed him wouldn't want to be near him, he said. Kroka looked confused before speaking up. So you're saying he will be more wrath-filled at the other factions for what happened? She asked confirmation. She asked for confirmation. Kokaville looked deadly serious. Precisely, he replied. That's when Volley noticed something wrong. Where's Time at? She asked aloud. Everyone looked around and found that the Dragon King was nowhere in sight. Kuroka decided to speak up. I saw her talking with Issei before he fell unconscious, she said. Everyone amused on what she said or what she could be doing. Scene break. We're going to the Co-Academy where, she's spying on them. Tiamat, for lack of better terms, was still confused on where to start. She knew she would eventually have to spy on the devils and see what she could get from them. She finally decided what course of action to take. School was already out, so she was going to snoop around the hyoudou household to see what she could find. With that set in her mind, she continued forwards. Soon before she knew it, was already in front of the house. She was already in front of the house. She quickly masked her presence so no one would know she was there. She snuck around the window where the living room and listened in. She started hearing them talk about something. Are you sure that's a good idea? It was a male voice. She didn't really know anything about them, but she knew Issei was with them before and didn't take kindly to being betrayed. Kiba, we have no choice. We need more pieces to be able to combat him. You know the power he had now. It was Rias who spoke up next. Tiamat wondered who they were planning to recruit. Biocho, those two are just normal humans. Even if they know how to fight, Kiba replied. Tiamat was still confused at this. That is enough, Kiba. This decision is final, she said. It was eerily silent now. Tiamat felt a dreading sensation coming on. She quickly started to step away from the house, thinking she may have been found out. She dashed away as the front door opened and her whole entourage stepped out. She was masking her presence, though. She knew they shouldn't be able to sense her easily. She looked at the girl to the right with the white hair, and she knew what she was able to sense her with senjutsu. Where are you? Ria shouted with the authority. Tiamat didn't like the situation. She figured Issei wouldn't care if she thrashed out at them a bit either. It was seemingly like that was going to happen soon. She noticed the knight of the group start to go towards her way, and the rest of them followed. She quickly dodged a slash from his sword and cut the bushes and she was hiding behind. Who are you? Rias asked curiously. She was glowing crimson. Tiamat smirked and stood up. A very close friend of your ex-pawn, Issei hyoudou, she said in a flirty tone. Everyone was shocked and they narrowed their eyes. What's your name? Kiba asked. She turned to the knight and spoke in a bone-chilling tone. Oh, me? Allow me to introduce myself. I am Tiamat, the Chaos Karma Dragon, one of the 5 Dragon Kings, she said with a grin. Everyone shivered as she let her power leak, and they knew he was gaining some very powerful allies. Rias looked conflicted before speaking up. What do you want? She asked seriously. Tiamat was amused at the girl. I bring bad news, devils. Issei hyoudou doesn't like what happened to him that much. Prepare yourselves for the war that's coming straight at you. Issei has made it very clear, our group, that your heads will be mounted on a wall when he's done, she said with an eerie grin. Everyone flinched at her words. They knew they couldn't fight her at all. She was a Dragon King, and they were barely a purge. They had no choice but to back off. They quickly summoned their own magic circle and teleported away from the fight that was going to happen. Tiamat looked upset that she didn't get to toss them around for a bit. Sighing to herself, she made her own circle and hopped back in it and went back to the mansion. When she arrived where she knew something was wrong, she walked into the house to see the group minus Kuroka in the living room. What's going on? She asked. Volley looked at her to see a little angry at her being gone. Where have you been? She questioned her. Tiamat just tilted her head. Issei sent me on a mission to spy on the devils and see what kind of information I can get from them, she replied. Volley's eyes wide as she lowered her head. Tiamat noticed this and decided to speak up. What happened? She asked. Rainier spoke up. Issei has begun his 3rd stage of his evolution and is unconscious, she answered. Tiamat's eyes widened. He had already undergone it? In her head, there was a lot of questions that needed to be answered. So the group sat down and filled her on the details about what happened. She was listening intently on what was being said. It seemed he was going through a rough patch. Kokaville looked at Tiamat and spoke up. So what did you find out? He asked. Everyone else looked to see her answer. It seems the devils are moving to counter us as they thought. His old Praja decided to bring 2 new recruits in. I don't know who they are, though. I did a confrontation with them before they escaped in a magic circle, she replied. Kokaville was in a thought for a minute. It seems they are mobilizing for war, he amused. Volley wondered what he was thinking. He was the one she he was the one she would ask about the topic. He was a warmonger, after all. What do you think we can expect, she asked him. He looked at her for a few moments before answering. Honestly, anything. In times of war, the factions are unpredictable. If they have all united, that's only more against us. Not to mention if they've gathered any more allies, he replied. Volley thought about it for a moment. So pretty much a full-scale battle like a great war, but worse, Volley asked. Everyone was shocked. If that was really what they were going to expect, it was going to be very bloody. Yes, he said. With that in their minds, they continued on their 3 days. While thinking about Issei and his evolution he was going through, they knew it was going to be a couple of long weeks without him. They managed, though. They had to. Scene break, we're going back to the underworld. In an office of the Four Great Satans, Sir Zex had gotten a call from his sister Rias. He was told about they had some information that they needed to hear and that it was pertained to Issei. Hyoudou was still a rough subject for him. His defeat was handled to him on a silver platter. He couldn't do anything to stop the power he had at his disposal. He looked up to his sister's purge and entered the room. He quickly stood up and told them to take a seat, and they would begin. So what is it you have to tell me, he asked curiously. His sister Rias was the one to speak up. Issei has gathered more allies. We found them snooping around the house last night, she asked. Sir Zex raised an eyebrow at this. Oh? Who was it? Did they say anything of importance, he asked. Rias looked at Psalm for a moment. She said she was the Chaos Karma Dragon Tiamat, and that Issei plans to mount our heads on a wall after he's done, she replied. That unnerved Sir Zex greatly. Issei Hyoudou was becoming stronger and stronger every day, not just in individual strength, but overall in numbers as well. The situation was getting worse. They feared it was counting down. They were hoping to buy time to prepare for the inevitable, but it now seemed like that wasn't going to be possible. He was thinking intently on what to do. He looked at his sister, and her purge spoke up. I'm going to inform Seraphal of this. If the danger starts to increase, we may need you to pull the guys out of Ko and back into the underworld, he said. They nodded and got up to leave. For now, keep a close eye on you at all times, he said. With that said, they returned to Ko, leaving Sir Zex alone to think about what he was going to do. First, he was going to stop by Seraphal's office and inform her, and then they would stop by Gregor and tell Azazel. Before he knew it, he had already jumped into his own circle, appeared outside Seraphal's office. He started towards the doors and continued forwards. Once Seraphal noticed the door open, she was surprised to see him. Sir Zex? What's going on? She asked, confused. He looked solemn for a moment. We have some news that Rias found out, he said. She leaned forwards and motioned for him to continue. It seems that Issei has been gaining more allies. Tiamat was snooping around the house, and it ended in a standoff, and she had some colorful words, he explained. That alarmed Seraphal. It seemed the situation was getting worse and worse every day. She looked at Sir Zex seriously. What did they say? She asked. When Issei is done, he plans to mount their heads on a wall, he replied curdily. That shocked her. This is troubling. First Kokaville and now Tiamat. I assume Tiamat was the first one he recruited. We need to find out where his group's location is, she said. Sir Zex nodded and agreed with her. It was starting to get out of control. So what are we going to do now, she asked. He looked at her for a second before replying. I'm going to inform Azazel and see if he has any ideas of how to locate him, he replied. She nodded and Sir Zex disappeared into another magic circle, continuing forwards on his goal. However, he didn't know about the storm that was coming his way. Chapter 14. Sneaking Around, Part 2. Azazel didn't know what to expect when Sir Zex showed up at the Gregor unexpected, without any prior notice or warning that he was coming, so he was a little apprehensive. Sir Zex, what can I do for you? He asked hesitantly. Sir Zex looked around in his office for a second before turning back to Azazel. I have some news about Issei Hyoudou, he said. Azazel raised his eyebrows. He was now listening intently. What is it? He asked curiously. Sir Zex looked serious for a moment before replying. Rias and her purge had a run-in with one of the members of his group, and it was shocking to learn who it was, he said. Now that grabbed Azazel's attention. He leaned in a little closer. Who was it? He asked. Sir Zex looked at him in the eyes and replied, Tiamat, the Chaos Karma Dragon, he replied. Azazel's eyes widened. Tiamat was a very powerful dragon. She wasn't a dragon king for nothing, after all. If he had gotten her on his side, that meant he was also gaining more power every day, and he would soon be ready to finish what he started. Azazel knew he would finish it too. Azazel was thinking hard for quite a bit. He knew something needed to be done, and they needed more information. He had an idea, but he didn't know how it would play out. So what do we do? He asked Sir Zex to see if he had anything on his mind. Rias and Sona are still in Ko, but if need be arises, they will fall back to the underworld. I think it's time to start tallying up our resources and start gathering allies as well, he replied. Who do you have in mind? He asked. Sir Zex knew who he wanted to go to first. The Norse faction, he answered. Azazel hummed and thought and nodded his head. That is most likely the best course at this moment. Odin will no doubt help us. With the Norse gods on our sides as well, we stand a better chance at not being annihilated, he mused. Azazel needed to get his thought on something else. We need information about his group. Any ideas, he asked? Sir Zex looked at him for a minute. I don't. His group must be very close, so they would keep secrets from anyone other than the group itself, he amused. Azazel decided to say what he thought. What about a spy, he asked. Sir Zex looked and thought for a moment. It could work. They would feed information to their use. However, if they were to get caught, their life would be forfeit, he said. Sir Zex did make a good point. Azazel knew if the person he was thinking about would get caught, they wouldn't be treated nicely. However, he still had to try. He knew who he was going to send anyways, and if he could fit with them pretty well. It was Pumane. Well, I already have a person in mind to be our spy, he said suddenly. Sir Zex looked at him. Who is it? He asked curtly. Pumane, he replied. Sir Zex nodded to himself. He knew it would be easy for them to trust her. Okay, fine. When is she set to leave? He asked. Azazel sheepishly rubbed to the back of his head. She has already left. We think they may have grouped up with Volley. She's heading to their mansion, he said. Sir Zex nodded once again. Okay, just keep us in the loop of what goes on, he said. Azazel nodded and Sir Zex left in a magic circle. He was going to his next destination. Asgard, the home of the Norse gods. Scene break. We're going with Pumane. Pumane currently found herself walking through the woods on a trail that she knew would lead to Volley's mansion. Everyone had a good reason to believe that Issei had went to them pretty quickly. She was the holder of Albion and Divine Dividing, so it was only natural. She was also wondering what she would encounter when she got there. Would the group of bloodthirsty and vengeful that she didn't know? However, what she and everyone didn't know is that once she got there, her ideals and morals were just drastically challenged by what she would find. It would change her forever. Before she knew it, she was standing right in front of the massive white doors of Volley's mansion. She prepared herself for what she would receive from the inside of the mansion. With nerves steel, she knocked on the door. She wasn't expecting the person to open the door. Kokaville. He wasn't expecting to see her at all. What do you want? He sneered. She raised her hands in a passive manner. I left the Gregor. I don't want to have anything to do with him, she lied. Kokaville's eyebrows raised. So you want to join us, huh? He asked. She nodded her head. He sighed and led into the mansion. Well, you have to talk to Issei, the boss, later, he said. She knew he meant Issei, but he said later. Did that mean he wasn't there or something was going on? What's she doing here? Surprised Volley asked. Kokaville looked to the female and replied, She's wanting to join us. It seems she left the Gregor, he shrugged. Volley sighed after hearing that. Well, Pimine, you'll have to wait for your answer, she said vaguely. Pimine was extremely confused. What's going on, she asked. Volley shrugged and replied, Issei has fallen into a coma, you could say, although it was self-induced, she confessed. Pimine was confused again. Why would he be in a coma, she thought. Before she could ask what she meant, she heard footsteps from upstairs. They were coming downstairs. Soon, Rainier, Calawarn, and Kuroko all appeared. Rainier and Calawarn were livid at seeing her. What is she doing here? They both screamed. Kuruka's face went blank. She was obviously on edge at seeing a new face. She didn't know who it was. It was obvious it was a fallen angel. I left the Gregor. Things are becoming too hectic. Azazel is paranoid and had started ordering the organization to prepare for war, she lied. Kokaville snorted. So you've come to side with the one that will win, huh? He mused. Kokaville snorted. It wouldn't be right if a few people weren't suspicious. Some of them were, but they didn't voice it. Rainier and Calawarn were jealous, mostly, while Volley didn't really mind. Where's the rest of the guys? Pumane asked. She asked Tiamat wasn't here. Arthur and LaFay are training right now, and Tiamat is watching Issei currently. Donosik, I don't know where he is, Volley replied. Pumane had another question. How long has he been out? She asked. Volley looked to everyone and shrugged. Probably around a week or two, she answered. Before Pumane could ask another question, Kokaville decided to speak up. So what are we going to do in the meantime until he wakes up, he asked. Volley looked at him, and he was utterly stupid. We train and wait until he wakes up so he can move forward, she replied. However, none of them knew what was going on with Issei at the moment, and how or when he would wake up very soon. He would also have news about something. They had no idea what was about to come to pass. Scene break, we're in Issei's dream right now, so this is Issei's basically mindscape. Issei didn't know where he was. He had an idea. However, it was only a tiny one. He knew if it was true, was more the reason why he was here. All he could see was colors, clusters of red, blue, green, pink, and purple as far as the eye could see. It was endless. The idea he had in his mind was growing stronger by every moment. He looked around and saw nothing but stars. He knew where he was, the dimensional gap, home of the apocalypse dragon Great Red. Bahamut? Drag? He tried reaching the dragons. No answer. He decided to summon his sacred gear. Nothing. The boosted gear wouldn't form, neither did Annihilation's descent. Something was blocking his connection. He knew what it was instantly. Your dragons can't help you here, Issei, hyoudou, a powerful voice spoke. Issei turned around and was met with a gigantic red dragon with golden eyes. This was truly the apocalypse dragon of legend, Great Red in the flesh. Issei felt a pebble now compared to the dragon's side. He knew, however, he was here for a reason. Great Red, Issei replied. He tried to sound respectful. Great Red snorted. No need to be fearful, Issei. I only brought you here to answer some questions, he said vaguely. Why can't I contact my dragons? Issei asked. Great Red rolled his eyes and replied, I am the dragon of dreams. As you are asleep, you're now undergoing your own evolution. Dreams are in my domain. Bahamut may be the annihilation dragon god, but his domain is destruction. That's where he gets his full power from. Like with Orphis, her infinity. She gets power from just that concept. I am the dragon of dreams, and as such I gain my power from the dreams of everyone. We all have our own domains, Great Red explained. Issei blinked and looked around before speaking up. So what am I here for? He asked confused. Great Red looked at him in his eyes before replying. You, Issei Hyoudou, interest me. You were betrayed by everyone that you were cared for. You come back wanting nothing more than to right the wrongs of people of the world, carving a path that will no doubt change the future forever. What is it that drives you, Issei? Who is Issei Hyoudou? Who are you? That is what I want to know. I wanted to see the man behind it all, the man who vowed to change everything, the man that defeated Hades when he returned to the underworld, the man that caused a shockwave of turmoil among the factions. Who are you, Issei Hyoudou read aloud. Issei blinked. He knew what he was asking. I am just a normal person who wants nothing more to live his life without the heartbreak. I don't want what happened to me to happen to anyone. I will not stand for it, even if it takes 1,000 years. I will right the wrongs of this cruel world, he shouted in fury. It seems the Great Red got his answer. As he gave out, a heartily laughed. He could feel the determination etched in his voice. Very well, Issei Hyoudou. You have proven your conviction to me. I just wanted to know if you would follow your plans to the end of the world and beyond, Great Red said. Issei blinked and decided to speak up. So what did you bring me here for then? He asked, confused. Great Red sighed, then replied. You are waging war, Issei. Tides have turned and the factions are mobilizing. I have seen glimpses of other dreams and I know what you will face. This war will be calling the Great War a skirmish in comparison. You are facing off against strong enemies. Some of them will have enough power to stand up to you for a while. One is Orphis. She had sided with the factions and wanted to get you out of the picture, Great Red said. Before Issei could speak, Great Red continued. So I have decided. Once you awake from the dimensional gap, we will have a battle. You will prove to me that you are worthy of my strength, Great Red explained. Issei's eyes widened. He was going to fight the Apocalypse Dragon in order to get more strength, and another ally he was going to fight the second most powerful being to exist, and he knew Great Red wasn't going to hold back at all. He was going to have a really good fight to him to win him over. With that said, Great Red released him and Issei went back to his normal dream. Scene break to Asgard. Odin, the king of the Norse gods, wasn't expected to be visited by Lucifer of the underworld. He knew if he was there it was serious. Sir Zex, what do I owe the pleasure of your visit today? He asked, intrigued. Sir Zex looked serious. Odin knew it wasn't the time for jokes at all. I trust you have heard of Issei Hyoudou, Sir Zex asked. Odin narrowed his eyes. He heard about the boy, how he was waging war against the factions. The Norse hoped to stay neutral and not face the wrath of the boy, but if Sir Zex was here, then it was serious. Yes, I do know about him and what was currently going on, he answered. Sir Zex sighed, as he knew what he was about to ask Odin would be tough. We have information about him. He is gathering powerful allies. We know he has Kokavil, Time Out the Chaos Dragon Karma on his side. Who knows who else he is aiming for and how he's already gathered, Sir Zex explained. Odin rubbed his chin and thought. It was truly troubling. It looked like they weren't going to be able to stay neutral as they thought. So you came here wanting Asgard's help in this war, he said aloud. Sir Zex nodded respectfully. Odin sighed. He knew it was the right thing to do. Political relations would be tested and wouldn't have to be anywhere without any risk. Very well, Sir Zex. You will have Asgard's support in the war, Odin commanded with authority. Sir Zex sighed and thanked Odin. He had to leave and prepare for the underworld. As he left Odin's side and called in his son Thor. Thor was surprised when he got a summon by his father. He knew it was serious. Father, what is the matter? He asked, confused. We are going to aid the side of the factions in the war against Issei Hyoudou, he said. Thor was confused. I thought we were going to stay neutral, he asked. It seems he has gathered some strong allies. Sir Zex came to ask me today, he answered. Thor knew now it was serious. The call of the battle was coming closer. He knew it was only the matter of time until hell and heaven was unleashed in one gigantic battle. Unknown to anyone, a pair of golden eyes opened for the first time in 2 weeks, belonging to none other than Issei Hyoudou. He was going to shake the very foundation of the supernatural world with his new power in the next days to come. Chapter 15. Awakened. Golden brown eyes looked towards the ceiling of the fan as he awoke. Issei Hyoudou was awake for the first time in 3 weeks. He sat up and looked at his arms. He could see his body change. He looked around in the room. He was going to find no one. He knew he was in the mansion, though. Dreg, he muttered. The voice came out a second later. How are you feeling? It was Dreg, the red dragon. Issei cracked his neck and started to stand up. "A little sore," he muttered. "Your power has significantly risen too," Bahamut spoke up. He then remembered what he dreamed of. He didn't know Bahamut and Dreg knew. "How do I get to the dimensional gap?" he asked. They were a little silent after that statement. "Great Red wanted to fight you, and he won't hold back, so you have to be ready. To get there, it can be hard. Yakuza can open the Dragon Gate. You could create a tear and enter that way," Drake said. Issei nodded. He knew that what he was going to do. "This will be your biggest fight yet." And what Drake said is true. Dragons are races of pride and will not hesitate, Bahamut said. Issei knew this battle was about to be like nothing other than he had ever done. It was going to be a challenge. He needed to figure out his power quickly and efficiently. He nodded and started to walk towards the door. He looked down the stairs to see no one coming up. He wondered what time it is. He rubbed his neck and walked downstairs. As he looked under the couch, he saw Issei, they all yelled. He waved them off. He noticed a new face in the mansion. "How are you feeling?" Rainier quickly asked. "Good, just a little sore," he replied. He looked to Puman. "Who's this?" he asked. Volley was the one to speak up. "Premin." She left the Gurgar saying, "Azazel is starting to get paranoid, Volley." Issei just shrugged his shoulders. "There's something I need to say," he started. They all started listening. "We might get a new ally," he stated. They all were wondering who it was. "Who is it?" Kokaville asked with Issei's expression. He knew it was serious. "Great Red bought me the dimensional gap while I was unconscious. He challenged me," he said. Kokaville spat out his drink after hearing that. "You were going to fight the Apocalypse Dragon?" he screeched. Everyone had the same thought. I have no choice. He knows something we don't informed, and we might face a little more when we originally thought," he replied. "You're going to face him? So you need to be ready," Kokaville said. Issei nodded. "Great Red. Even if you have Bahamut, it will still be a tough match. Accept massive energy blasts and some serious pressure. If you're fighting in the dimensional gap, you need to take the fight away from there. That's his home turf, so he has the home field advantage," Kokaville said. Issei nodded to his statement. He knew Kokaville was pretty smart. He knew what he was talking about. Great Red is a dragon. He is one of the first beings to exist. He has lived in the gap ever since. He has gotten used to the pressure it has. You need to be prepared to withstand it," Tiamat said suddenly. Issei looked at Tiamat curiously and spoke up. "What do you mean?" he asked. "You're going to be facing the toughest opponent you have ever faced. You can't hold anything back at all. I highly doubt he will," she said. Issei nodded to her statement. It was true. He knew this was going to be the biggest fight ever. They all watched as he stood up. "Then we're going to train for a bit. In a few days, I will go to Yakuza to open the Dragon Gate," he said. Puman watched as everyone followed him without a word. It was odd to her. She wondered what earned their complete trust. Puman was the only one to need to know basis on what happened to Issei hyoudou, so she would have some parts of story to hear from the man himself. "So today, we're going to resume our training. However, I have something different planned out," he started. Everyone started. Tiamat, Kokaville, and Donosik. "You three will be facing me in a 3v1, he said. Everyone was shocked. That was a gigantic understatement. Even Ostrek wouldn't fit it. "Why?" Donosik asked lazily. Everyone wanted to know as well. "I need to know the full extent of my power. It has changed. I want you three not holding back, neither will I," he said aloud. They were all shocked beyond belief. He was going to truly use his power. Whenever he sparred with them, he made sure not to overdo it. He would only use Balance Breaker, and that was good enough to make Volley be pressured. They and thought it was enough to make Volley start to be pressured. They wondered what they were going to see today. "Very well," Kokaville said aloud. Tiamat nodded. "You asked for it," Donosik said with a grin. Issei nodded, and 3 of them walked into the circle. The rest of them watched as he put a barrier around the 4 of them. It was about to start. "Whenever you're ready," Issei said. He watched all 3 of them as they prepared to fight. He knew in terms of power, Tiamat was clear victor over the 2, but Kokaville had the advantage of being a warmonger. He knew how to fight. He knew what is to expect as well. Donosik was in the same league as Kokaville. Being a few pairs of wings less didn't really matter. Issei knew Donosik was crafty and would take every opportunity to get him. Issei quickly avoided a light spear that was aimed right at his heart. He looked to Kokaville to see a shit-eating grin. He quickly looked behind him to see Donosik. He was holding a light axe. Issei cursed himself as he knew Donosik had learned how to change his weapons' shape. He narrowly avoided the strike that connected with ground and sent a shockwave across the area. Issei nodded. Tiamat was silent. She broke into a spirit and came towards him. She was glowing bright blue. She was gathering her energy as she charged them. Issei knew they were working as somewhat of a team. He knew with 3 attacks coming his way, he would not be able to avoid them all. It was a debate on which one was to purposely take a hit. A charged punch by Tiamat, a gigantic light spear by Kokaville, or a crushing axe by Donosik. Screw it, he thought. He ran forwards at Tiamat and stopped a few feet in front of her. He quickly caught both Donosik and Kokaville's attack easily. However, he left the door open for a punch that was sent to his gut and made him skip back. He grinned as he looked up. They had the same expressions. "I didn't really expect you to get hit from one that quickly. I'm impressed. However, it's time to get serious," he said. They all watched as his energies rose quickly. All 3 of them looked at each other and nodded. They knew this was coming. "Boost!" They all watched in awe as he boosted the gear activate. It was more powerful than what they have seen last. Primrose had no coherent thoughts. She didn't expect him to be this strong. She knew that there was more power to come as well. She continued to watch. Taimat suddenly charged at Issei. Kokaville and Donosik suddenly followed behind her. Issei watched their movements like a hawk. It was strange to him. He could see the power rise off them, but he could also see where it was being directed. Taimat's fist was coming closer as he watched it. With one hand quickly caught and spun her around and threw her at Kokaville, sending him flying back. Issei looked at Donosik, who summoned another axe. He was dual-wielding light axes. Issei groaned after seeing that. Donosik quickly charged at him. Issei charged forward as well to meet him. Before anyone knew it, Issei's fist met with crossed axes as Donosik blocked. Issei knew he had to get rid of one of the axes to get. He knew something that he could use. However, that short time that they met, it was enough for Taimat and Kokaville to get back up. Issei quickly backflipped to avoid a fireball sent at him. He quickly regained his bearings and decided it was once again time to step it up a bit. He quickly dashed forward in his opponents. Donosik was closest to him. Taimat and Kokaville had recently gotten up again and were more towards the back of the barrier. Donosik would be easiest to take out, but he knew the moment he went after him, Taimat and Kokaville would fight right behind him. He needed to separate them for a while so he could deal with each one individually. He needed to come up with a plan. He quickly jumped to avoid an entry blast from Taimat. It was strange. It was like he knew it was coming ahead of time. It was like for all the attacks he faced, he knew where they would land and how to avoid them and strike it back. He landed on the ground and looked at Donosik. Boost! Everyone watched as he charged at Donosik. They knew he was serious now. Pinman's eyes widened as she saw the power that was being used by him. They watched as Donosik narrowly avoided a fist aimed at him. However, he failed to notice Issei was already sending a roundhouse kick. That kick was deraimed actually at his collarbone. They watched as Donosik crumpled on the floor. Issei looked to Kokaville next. He knew Donosik would be down for a little bit. He bought some time to take on the others. He charged up once again, this time towards Kokaville. Boost! Kokaville charged as well. They both met with clash of fists. Taimat was suddenly charging up to help Kokaville. Issei was starting to get a little annoyed. Every time he went towards someone, another one came towards him. He should have expected it though, really. It was a 3v1 fight and he wanted to push himself. It was time once again to step it up. Welch Dragon, Annihilation, Balance Breaker. Those 5 words were enough to make everyone flinch. The power that was gathering around Issei was incredible. It started to swell around him as he donned his armor. Blade! Everyone was shocked. He was using Ascalon, the dragon-slaying sword? Issei was suddenly in a much higher advantage now. He was outmatched, sure, but he had the power of them with that blade. Taimat looked very cautiously at the blade. Kokaville wasn't any better at all. He knew the power of the dragon-slaying magic, very dangerous to them. If Issei was using it, they were truly starting to force him to pull out everything he had. Kokaville, you may already know this, but that blade will be the end if you don't dodge it. Dragon slayers aren't normally powerful enough to one hit. But combined with this new power, you'd be toast in one slice from that blade, Taimat said. She looked at Donosik to see him still down. He most likely wasn't going to be able to fight now, and if Issei powered up more, it would only add more to it. She looked to Kokaville and added that they both nodded at each other. They both charged at Issei. Taimat was glowing blue. She was releasing more power than before. Issei quickly dashed forwards and again with Ascalon aimed. Boost! They were starting to fear the barrier might break. Issei was exerting a lot of pressure as he started to power up even more. Taimat backed up as she felt his power increase. Kokaville did the same. It was starting to get interesting. Everyone charged him at the same time. Kokaville needed to watch out for the sword. As Ascalon came swinging, he quickly formed a light spear to block it. A screeching noise flew across the area as the blade and spear met. Everyone outside was watching in anticipation. Taimat saw this as her chance to charge Issei while occupied with Kokaville. Issei knew this was coming. Boost! As that sound rang out, Issei pulled his left leg back while still pressing against Kokaville's light spear. Kokaville looked at what he was doing and it was already too late. With one power-packed kick, Issei sent Kokaville flying into the barrier. He was down. One down, one to go. Taimat versus Issei. Taimat decided it was time. Issei watched as she started to grow it, glowing a sapphire blue. Her power was rising. She was going into her dragon form. Before anyone knew it was this explosion of power was released, and standing in that place of Taimat's human form was a big blue western dragon. She was staring at Issei intently. Well, Issei, it seems like it's just you and me. Let's finish this, Taimat roared. She knew her attempts were futile, even though it was her pride as a dragon that she pushed forward. If she was going down, she was going down swinging like hell. Issei grinned as she fired off several fireballs towards him. He quickly dashed to avoid them. He could see 3 more coming at him. He quickly charged straight for the second one that was coming. He aimed at Ascalon at it. With one slice, he clearly cut the second fireball in half, completely disposing of it. Everyone was at awe of the power he was using effortlessly. He looked to them like it was second nature. They wondered what was going on. It seemed Issei was acting on instinct. The third fireball was closing in on Issei fast. However, Issei wasn't even phased a bit, looking as he grinned and charged up once again. This time he aimed for the flat of his blade towards the fireball. He was intent on hitting it back at Time Mat. When the fireball finally got within range, he swung the blade with the flat aimed at the fireball. There was a loud noise that rang out after the fireball was struck by Ascalon. Time Mat was honestly impressed. He used Ascalon like a bat, hit her fireball back at her. With a flap of her wings, she quickly avoided it though. Kokaville and Dodoseek decided it was time to withdraw, so they exited the barrier, leaving Time Mat left. Issei looked at the fourth and final fireball that it was coming his way. He looked at Time Mat and grinned. "You should have shown me your power, Time Mat. Now I will do the same," he said aloud. Everyone wondered what he was going to do. They watched as he held his hand out and his palm facing upwards. Rainier, Collarwarner, and Donoseek eyes widened as they saw what was coming, a sphere of annihilation. Time Mat suddenly felt the power that was rising dramatically in Issei. She looked to his palm to see a small black orb of energy above his palm. It had pitch black lightning coursing through it. She could tell it was extremely powerful. She watched curiously as he clenched his fists around the orb. When he opened it back up, the orb grew in size. It was the same size as the fireball that was coming towards him. He looked at Time Mat and grinned before throwing it. Rainier, Collarwarner, and Donoseek looked all fearful when it was thrown. "Everyone, brace yourselves!" They all screamed as they put their guard up. Everyone quickly did the same and watched as the sphere fireball flew at each other. To say they were shocked would be an understatement. As the two attacks clashed, it was obvious which one was going to win. The sphere of annihilation quickly expanded as it came in contact with the fireball, efficiently swallowing it whole and erasing it. Time Mat had no words. Her fireball were utterly obliterated without an effort. She knew Issei some good hits as well, so in her mind it was a good fight either way. "I must say, Time Mat, that was something. I never expected you 3 to make me go balance breaker. I think I'm ready for red," he said aloud. Kokaville and Donoseek were a little roughed up, but they would heal real easily. Everyone looked to Issei as he powered down. Paimon was completely and utterly stupefied at the whole thing. She never expected at all to think that he was this powerful. She knew she needed to think. As the scale-mail armor fell on the ground, everyone looked at him a bit cautiously. He knew they had just seen some of the power being used to overpower 3 opponents. Issei took a look at the 3 of them again. Time Mat was fine, Kokaville was able to stand, and Donoseek looked fine as well. "So what's next?" Folly asked. Issei looked up for a moment, thinking he knew it was almost time. "Tomorrow I will go to Yasuka and have her open the gate. After that we begin," he said. They didn't know what he meant by begin, but they knew one thing: something was coming, and it was coming very soon. That will be the 1-hour special. So hopefully you guys did enjoy this. Okay, we still have plenty of chapters to go. I'm on chapter 16 out of 27, so hopefully part 6 will come soon. But again, thank you for all the support. I hit 9,000 subscribers and we are on the road to 10K. That 45-minute special was actually the special, but I decided to make a 1-hour special. This took a lot out of me, so please like and subscribe for more. And without further ado, Spartanic out. Peace.